It reminded him of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he came to his senses. He said he would never commit sin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave all his sins. And so he was, surely this man will be destined for heaven. So this comes to us as human beings. Of course, we get off the straight path quite often. We lie, and we cheat and stuff like that. But the idea here is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a forgiver. He forgives. He has created us, and He will forgive you if you are willing to be forgiven, if you are willing to do the work for that forgiveness. And so even a small act can lead you into paradise, and even a small act can also lead you into the hellfire. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us that strength, that will, to stop us from doing things that can lead us into the hellfire and put us on the right path. Another story transmitted says, while a person was in the wilderness, he heard a voice from the cloud commanding it, irrigate the garden of so-and-so, and after that the cloud separated from other clouds and came to a side and poured water on a stony ground. It filled a channel amongst the channels of that land, meaning the canals. That person followed the water and found a man standing in the garden occupied in channeling the water with the help of a hatchet. He said to him, "Servant of Allah, what is your name?" And he gave him the same name that he had heard from the cloud. Then the other asked him, "Servant of Allah, why do you ask me my name?" He said, "I heard a voice from the cloud which has brought the downpour, saying, water the garden of so and so, taking your name. What do you do? What do you do that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown you the favor in this matter?" He said, "Now that you ask, I look what I yield. I look what I yield. What yield I get from it, and I give 1/3 as charity out of it, and my children eat 1/3 of it, and 1/3 I return to as investment." So the story, of course, it's a miracle, but the story shows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we are good people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will also help us in our daily acts that we do. So if we are people who are giving, people who give zakat, we are people who follow it. We are people who follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's religion. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will try to compensate us in this world by showering us with His blessings. And those blessings can be in different forms. Those blessings can be in forms of friends, in forms of material wealth, in forms of miracles. Something bad happened and you were saved. And so this is a similar story. This man who continued to give his wealth in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by supporting poor people, charity, by giving food to his children, by being a responsible human being, and of course investing in his business. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him by bringing down rain from the heavens to give his farm, to grow his crops, basically. Lastly, another story that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has been quoted saying, a person visited his brother in another town, and Allah deputed an angel to wait for him on his way. And when he came to him, he asked him, "Where do you intend to go?" He said, "I intend to go to my brother in this town." He asked, Have you any right over him for the recompense of which you go there?" He said, "No. The purpose of the visit is nothing, but I love him for the sake of Allah, the glorious, the majestic." The angel then disclosed to him, "I am a messenger to you from Allah to inform you that Allah loves you as you love Him for His sake." So we can see that. So we have several stories here. We have the story of the person who does good deeds, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses him by watering his fields because he is a good person. With a person who is a sinful person and he has continued to do sin since the time of inception, meaning after he grew up, after he got his senses, meaning a child around 10, 11, he's been doing sin. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives him because that person did one good deed and the next day he died, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave him. And in this case we have another story, a story where a person is going to just to see another person just because he wants to see him and he loves him. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us that we as Muslim brothers should do good deeds for others, but also love our Muslim brothers. And so this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves him because he loves other people for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so lastly, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring these acts that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told us about into our lives, so we can inculcate these actions into our lives, and inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless us. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Lastly, I will recount one more story, inshallah, and the khutbah. Well, a man was walking, he felt thirsty and went down to a well and drank water from it. On coming out of it, he saw a dog panting and eating mud of excessive thirst. The man said, "This dog is suffering from the same problem as I had been suffering." So he went down to the well, filled his shoe with water, caught hold of it with his teeth, and climbed up and watered the dog. Allah appreciated his gesture, and Allah forgave him. And the people asked, "O Allah's Messenger, is there a reward for us in serving the animals?" He replied, "Yes, there is a reward for serving the animals." Abu Hurairah has said about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, a prostitute saw a dog moving around a well on a hot day and hanging out its tongue because of thirst. She drew the water for it in her shoe, and she was pardoned because she satiated the thirst of the dog. A prostitute passed by, another one says, a prostitute passed by a panting dog near a well. She saw that the dog was about to die of thirst. She took off her leather sock and tied it with her head cover and drew out some water for it. So Allah forgave her because of it. Lastly, we as human beings, we are here for a purpose on this planet. There's a balance that human beings occupy a balance in our world. So, for example, there is this lake that is very salty, and so when animals go to this lake, they drink the water from this lake and they die because there's so much salt in the water. But there's flies that feed from the water, and of course on the animals that die on this lake. So what happens is these birds, other birds that don't drink from the water of the lake, they eat these flies. So what happens is these flies have water in them, and they're also there's a caloric benefit because when they eat it, they get calories, they get energy from eating the flies. So they satiate their thirst by eating the flies, and they also satiate their hunger by eating the flies. So they eat two things, but they can't drink the water of the lake. So this fly drinks that water, eats from the muck that is in the water. But if we or another animal ate from that or drank from that lake, we die. So that fly is there for a purpose. That fly is there, and that it satiates the hunger for other birds and animals. And so human beings are the same. So for example, if you read geography or in science, they say that when the first human beings came, they would do important things for the forest. So for example, what they would do is they would light small forests and they would burn. They would burn the forest. And so what the burning would do is it would increase the minerals in the soil because you're breaking down particles, you're breaking down material which is giving food to the soil, and then other plants would grow in that soil that they had burnt. And so we as human beings are balanced. And so when we destroy that balance, be it spiritually or even physically in a material way, we are not only harming ourselves but the planet around us. And so Islam, as human beings, Islam teaches us to be good to not only just animals, but to ourselves as well. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made certain things haram for us. Certain things are not good for us, certain kinds of drinks, certain kinds of food, certain kinds of actions, they are not good for us because they not only hurt us in a psychological manner, but they hurt us in a physical manner. And they hurt the surroundings. And so, as I said, these stories that I recount, these stories are here to help you and to help us, to help me, to help the world in becoming better human beings, so we can be a part of that cycle, and be a part of that cycle in a way that we help each other, not only each other, but the world as well. For example, last example, inshallah, and this. What happens is when animals are not hunted, for example, there's certain animals, certain prey, they would become too abundant. So what happens is, for example, a lion. A lion goes around, kills all the deer, they become abundant. Now what happens is the lion is now suffering from hunger because he can't find food. So the human being comes into the cycle. What does the human being do? The human being kills the deer for food, but also kills the lion. And so this has happened throughout history, where if a certain animal was not killed, it would of course result in that animal destroying the nature around it. And we see this throughout history. For example, if human beings did not kill a certain animal, they would wreak destruction amongst other animals and across the planet. So a bad example is that the human beings, when they first went to Australia, they had rats in their ships. So they brought these rats to Australia. These rats, they started growing. And they started killing everything around. They started destroying the land that they were in. Another example is during the 1800s, when the British went to Australia, they brought camels. When they brought camels to Australia because they wanted to supply the people, they had to supply all these outposts, they used camels. So now the camels have become a problem in Australia, so they started eating all the plants, destroying the plants, drinking water, total havoc. So they just started killing camels in huge numbers. In America, there's pigs. Pigs go around destroying huge properties, crops, animals, destroying houses, destroying farmland. And now the state, for example, Texas, they legislate people to go out there, they pay you money to go out there and kill pigs. So we are part of a balance. And this balance is not just spiritual, but also in our world as a whole. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this message so that we live as human beings in a balance. A balance a balance in our lives and a balance amongst other people. Jazakallah khair. عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم واشكروه يزدكم واستغفروه يغفر لكم واتقوه يجعل لكم من أمركم مخرجا. Slaves of Allah, Allah commands justice, the doing of good, and liberty to kith and kin, and He forbids all shameful deeds and injustice and rebellion. He instructs you that you may remember Allah the Supreme in glory, and He will remember you. And be thankful to Him, and He will increase you in bounty, and seek His forgiveness, He will forgive you. And have taqwa of Him, He will make for you a way out of your issues. Establish the prayer.